Welcome back to the 40 Million and a Tool YouTube channel, the reading series. The title of this next essay is The Poverty Industry. Like the prison industry in America, African Americans make up a sizable component of the poverty industry. What is the poverty industry? It's the workforce of charities, administrators, caregivers, caseworkers, counselors, outreach workers, and countless other employed persons, complete with unions, pensions, paid vacations, medical benefits, and pay raises that manage poverty. When you consider that millions of people are projected to live in poverty their entire lives, you easily understand how this will impact the society and spur into motion the needed services that must be produced, bought, sold, and delivered, thereby creating these jobs, as well as hundreds of thousands of collateral jobs for even more workers, not directly employed in the poverty industry, but who provide external services to the poverty industry from without. Thus, poverty becomes big business. Indeed, another industry with seemingly endless customers. You see, that is the effect of America as a capitalistic society. Anything can become an industry. You got the cosmetics industry, the airline industry, the music industry, the fashion industry, the food industry, the transportation industry. I can go on and on. There's another projection and prediction, however, that African Americans better take particular note of. It's the one that says families currently in poverty will more than likely be the families in poverty in the future. African Americans, with minor exceptions, can certainly give an amen to that. And given the proven proclivities of the American mass market economy, this scenario presents all the ingredients for a permanent and booming jobs-producing industry with African Americans once again in the lead position of generating wealth, resources, and comfortable livelihoods for others, albeit somewhat inadvertent and somewhat not. And while some would argue that African Americans also get some of these jobs in the poverty industry, any serious survey will show that most of those jobs exist at or near the bottom of the hierarchy, rendering African American poverty industry workers virtually a paycheck away from being in poverty themselves. So if the same people remain in poverty, who then benefits from the billions of dollars pumped into the poverty industry annually? Let's look at some questions. Are the good people at the thousands of human service agencies the flip side of an unending industry that allows them to benefit from poverty in salaries, health care, homes, and retirement plans? Could it be that the real skill of this workforce is that of deluding themselves into believing that they are truly in the business of eradicating poverty, even if it costs them their own livelihoods? These are very disturbing questions, particularly as we witness a profound shift of emphasis in human services from eliminating poverty to a mentality of units of service simply to maintain funding levels. In 1964, President Johnson declared a war on poverty. Subsequent presidents have declared war on crime, war on drugs, etc. Each war declaration pumped billions of dollars into the respective industries tasked with combating and winning these wars. Domestically speaking, it seems to me that anytime presidents and politicians want to fail at something, all they need do is declare a war on it and throw some money at it. While the problem remains and the wars rage on, what emerges when the smoke clears is that those ugly and shameful maladies, those undesirable blights festering upon the society, now fuel the creation of millions of jobs vital to the American economy. And once these jobs are in place, the employees and their unions, if applicable, fight fiercely to keep them, creating an employment dilemma that depends on current levels of crime staying the same, addiction and poverty remaining the same, or in many cases, increasing, so that expansion of services and facilities are justified, thereby creating even more jobs and alleviating nothing. It's fair to say that the people who enter the poverty industry as a career choice are good, caring folks motivated by a desire to make a difference and help others improve their lot in life. But would they toil in the vineyards of human suffering without monetary compensation? While some do, most need the employment opportunity to support their own lives, which begs the question, at what point does it become clear that this so-called war on poverty has only succeeded at preventing the possible poverty of those who get the jobs? Poverty itself gets passed down through the same generation of families, and the only changes they see are the faces in the workforce that come in to manage their generational poverty. In defense of these good people, however, it's not that they support their lives through employment in the poverty industry that is the problem. It is still the vast disconnect in American social and economic policy between its stated imperatives and the actual allocation of wealth and resources to remedy ills or right wrongs. This disconnect is precisely what has exacerbated the plight of African Americans and our struggle to overcome our particular brand of American racism and inequality. While the hateful rhetoric has diminished somewhat, the systematic exclusion from wealth, power, and resources needed by us to address our poverty in a powerfully self-directed way remains as strong as ever. It remains also the single most important reason why we, as a people, must secure our birthright of wealth. 40 million in a tool is simply an umbrella philosophy, apparatus, and strategy designed to accomplish unity among African Americans on just this one thing. All else will follow. The handout game. After generations of African American poverty, where families depended on welfare and various forms of social generosity, a mentality of dependence/entitlement developed that, coupled with a historically ingrained expectation of reparations for slavery, has unfortunately bred laziness in a great many of our people. Just as the cruel and extreme deprivation of slavery, sharecropping, and legalized last-class citizenship bred criminality. So much so that today, many of us have become experts at what I call the handout game. Because of these lingering conditions and the results they produce, welfare has been the central and, in many cases, the only springboard from which African American families hope to advance. But because welfare benefits in the last 60 years have remained at 1970s cost of living levels, recipients must supplement their benefits one way or another. Some take on babysitting jobs or do other off-the-book work. Some commit petty or major crimes, while others creatively invent one catastrophe after another. Whatever the route taken, all of the recipients learn to master the ins and outs of the handout game to supplement the fast decline of the once almighty benefit card. They all know the game, and they all feel from time to time they have no choice but to play it. The cycle is vicious, debilitating, and habitual. Another component of the handout game within the poverty industry is comprised of predatory lenders who entice the working poor with advanced handouts in the form of loans, often due in 2-week intervals against one's paycheck and inflated by huge interest rates. You'll find cities all across America littered with banners containing these enticements in storefront windows, pawn shops, check cashing establishments, and furniture and electronics rental businesses. Come tax time, there's an all-out assault on the working poor to fleece them of portions of their much-needed tax returns by offers of quick or immediate cash when, in fact, they do nothing more than tax the money again as they prey upon the ignorance and desperation of those most in need of sound financial guidance. 40 million in a tool can not only get us out of the broken promises business, but the handout business as well. In the process of securing our birthright of wealth, however, we need to clearly distinguish the kinds of things that wealth will automatically remedy or eliminate and the kinds of things that require education, character, spiritual grounding, and excellent decision-making skills. For instance, wealth can automatically eliminate the problems we have in the areas of housing, education, healthcare, food, clothing, daycare, transportation, entrepreneurial endeavors, and insurance of all kinds, just to name a few. The kinds of things that wealth can't and won't automatically eliminate are criminality, drug addiction, violent behavior, teen pregnancy, single-parent households, bad judgment, and all forms of stupidity. In short, wealth can eliminate material poverty, but it can't transform one into a quality human being. 40 million and a tool insists that we strive to achieve both. The face of poverty. As a child, I remember the pictures on television of starving black children called Biafrans. They looked like human skeletons. You could see their ribs as if they were on the outside of their bodies, and they'd appear so weak from hunger they couldn't even raise a hand to swat at the flies landing all over them. Today, when I see similar depictions of children from South America or Southeast Asia, I often wonder what became of those Biafran children. Is their poverty still prevalent now? Did any of them ever attend school? Are there any success stories? And if so, why aren't those stories shown to us on television? And last but not least, why is it that the poster child of poverty, indeed the very face of poverty throughout the world, African and other people of color? An easy answer to the last question is simply that the so-called white people of the world possess and control most of the world's wealth. Another answer is perhaps a more subliminal one that massages the minds of whites and people of color alike to believe that the salvation of people of color lies in the hands of the white people of the world, that this is the natural order of things. One could easily get that impression as they watch the advertisements of groups like the Christian Children's Fund, World Vision, Save the Children, Feed a Child Partner, and others. When these organizations film their appeals for our money, you never see little white kids in abject poverty, even though we know that white kids are also starving right here in America and in other parts of the world. Could it be that showing starving white children would confuse the message of a dark world perpetually dependent upon a white one? You be the judge. What do these images say to you? My personal view is that the world is still reeling and living in the aftermath and residue of 600 solid years of Euro-American Jim Crow-style global domination, with the oppressor nations desperately fighting to maintain a parental stranglehold on its former slaves and subjects through economic and technological deprivation, backed by the point of a gun and military might. Those who cooperate will qualify for foreign aid and or allied protection. Those who don't run the risk of being branded a terrorist state and their people live in squalor under sanctions. It's a variant of the message given to African Americans ever since our war-driven and politically expedient so-called emancipation. You'll never become our equal. Don't even try. President Abraham Lincoln said it best with these words, quote, "I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the black and white races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And insomuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." Close quote. So you can easily glean from this statement that if Lincoln had lived and the Union Army prevailed as it did, the Southern whites and slaveholders who comprised the Confederacy would have been spared from fighting what has come to be known as the Second Civil War, but which we know as the Reconstruction period. America would have gone straight to Jim Crow and probably to a labor system for ex-slaves worse than sharecropping. Since slaves were property and had no mandate or wherewithal to support their own lives, it's accurate to say that poverty for ex-slaves and their descendants began with the Emancipation Proclamation and subsequent waves of freedom notices. That we should live in poverty was driven by race then and is driven by race now, because it's the same poverty. Some may disagree with this assessment, and that's fine. But 40 million in a tool will never forget the cause of African American poverty and will never allow anyone to sugarcoat the truth of the African American road to poverty. But we will also look every African American in the eye and tell them to stop waiting and stop begging. We now have the ability to change our condition virtually overnight. Even as our leaders publish and point to annual statistics lamenting the excruciatingly slow pace of black progress. Included also in these reports are statistics showing the ever-widening gulf within black America between those of us who have wealth and those of us who don't. Finally, of the many strategies in these reports that we are exhorted to employ as a way to reverse trends and close gaps, taking our birthright of wealth from the American economy is not among them. We need to ask our black leaders why that is. Whether we like it or not, we were born on the African American team, the team that tragically descended from slaves, and the team that still catches much hell as a result of the slavery to Jim Crow to systematic discrimination to the current get yours, I'll get mine journey that we're on now. So in keeping with the concept of the team, in this sense, our leaders can be regarded as the management and coaching staff entrusted with the responsibility of building a winning franchise, devising a winning strategy, and putting a winning team on the field. Yet we come in last place year after year after year. 40 million in a tool in this scenario is simply an attempt to call an emergency huddle and suggest a play. Accept it or reject it, but at least put it in the playbook. Because any play, call it razzle dazzle or Hail Mary, can produce a touchdown. One thing is certain: the African American team as a whole are so far behind, we can't afford to keep playing perpetual catch-up. I believe our ancestors will applaud the 150 plus years of energy and effort spent to secure just the proverbial 40 acres and a mule promised to them, or some equivalent. But I suggest to you, my people, that if they were in the position we're in now, we and all of our descendants would never have to work for someone else again. They had the foresight, but especially the insight, that their entire people were under siege and that any liberation attempts were liberation efforts to alleviate the slavery and the suffering from all of them, not just a select few. However, they were not in the position we're in, but that didn't stop them from great and monumental attempts at liberation. This they did under the most hostile, barbaric, and inhuman treatment, both physically and psychologically, that white America saw fit to inflict upon them. Those conditions do not exist now. Therefore, we dishonor them every minute we remain dependent, and we dishonor ourselves every minute we remain divided and broke. Our peoplehood in America has largely been characterized by the fact that in order for us to just have a semblance of normal American life, we were forced to create the black equivalent of everything white. The black clergy, the black press, the black middle class, black colleges and universities, black Hollywood, black baseball, black Twitter, black associations of all kinds, even a congressional black caucus and black national anthem. All of this and more because of exclusion, not the natural outgrowth of a racially tolerant and harmonious society. These monuments and expressions of blackness are reactionary and inherently divisive and artificial, but born of necessity for the survival of a vanquished people. Yet even today we cling to them, we fund them, and to a large extent, we still need them. This alone should tell us two things. One, that we're capable of mobilizing wealth and building institutions. Two, that we've somehow abandoned that urgency which makes it possible. We engaged in all this blackness without coming away with a permanent black budget backed by black wealth. Now, when we speak of social justice, it's neatly couched in today's politically correct language of social justice for all Americans, as if we've gotten ours long ago. I'm all for social and economic justice for all Americans, but not at the expense of African Americans. Not anymore. 40 million in a tool is not interested in participating in the poverty industry and not interested in receiving money from the government to help manage the poverty of African Americans. We are only interested in ending the poverty of African Americans, but without courageous and unyielding leadership from within our own ranks, our poverty will be as enduring as the universe we live in. In this highly uncertain and dangerous post-9/11 world, and with white domestic terrorism once again on the rise, our best approach would be to take another page from our ancestors and look to the strongest among us, those whose influence we'd welcome and whose capable hands we trust. Our unique history in America, if it has taught us anything, has taught us this. The one thing our oppressors have always feared is our unity and our oneness, because it's the only liberation attempt that will succeed. Today, I call it 40 million and a two. Can I get a huddle?